So week 1, VLab 2, if you've been following along, this is going to also be lab 2 in our lab book, titled Using Access Control Lists to Modify File System Permissions on Windows Systems. So go ahead, I've already logged into the Distance Education website. I've already went to our VLab 2 area. Make sure to download the assessment document, review it, and make sure you know where you're going to need to do screenshots. And when you are ready to begin, go ahead and access lab. I'm doing this through Chrome. You may get a few Java pop-ups. Just go ahead and allow the pop-ups. The actual preparation for the lab can take a few minutes, so just be patient. So sadly, I've not had very consistent time with how long it takes the VLabs to actually load. But again, you just kind of have to be patient. So once the VLab loads, we're going to go ahead and open up our RDP session on the desktop. And we are going to go ahead and open up our Target 01 machine. You may get a network pop-up. Just go ahead and ignore it. Do you actually want to find PCs? No, we don't. Go ahead and exit out of your FileZilla pop-up as well. The steps are saying very specifically that we need to go ahead and open up this PowerShell script. So right-click on it, open with PowerShell. This will load the security profile that we're going to need to complete the rest of the lab. It's actually really funny because they probably could have just loaded this lab up where it actually launches that for us. For whatever reason, they did not. So once it goes and closes, we are ready to begin. Let's navigate to C drive, enter our lab documents. Again, that's going to be C drive on this machine. And our lab documents should actually already be loaded. So how we're going to do this is we're going to look at our SF files first. So let's go ahead and look at its properties. And we're going to be navigating to the Securities tab. So you should see FS Manager. They have the ability to read and execute, also to read and to write. They do not have the ability to modify or full control. Shop floor, same thing. And actually administrators has full control. So once we have seen that, we actually want to verify the same are set up for all the other folders. Managers, for HR manager files, they have the ability to read, list, read and write. HR files, same thing. Securities, we want to be able to see that HR manager has the appropriate permissions, the HR group has the appropriate permissions, and administrator is the owner with full control. So once we've gone ahead and verified that, we can go ahead and close out of all of them. So part 2 is actually dealing with modifications. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to start with SF files. I'm going to go back to our properties. We want to allow members of the shop floor user and managers to modify, read, and execute files in our folder. So we're actually going to go ahead and edit these. For our SF manager, we want the ability to modify, as well as read and execute. Read and execute. And that's it. So actually we do not want the ability to list or read. But you'll notice if we actually uncheck read or list, we lose all of them. If we uncheck the read, we only have the ability to list. So even though this is actually more permissions, we need all 4 of these permissions to be able to modify, read, and execute. We're going to verify shop floor is also set up correctly. Again, we want to add the ability to modify, read, and execute. But again, list content and read are there by default, so if we uncheck them, it unchecks the rest of them. Once you're done, go ahead and apply them and accept them. We're going to do the same thing for our HR files. This time we want human resource users and HR managers to modify, read, and execute. So same setup. We're going to edit the permissions. We want to allow the modify option for both HR and HR managers. Apply them, and accept them again. We actually want to do the same thing through the managers folder, and this will be allow members of the manager group to modify. So here we're not touching administrator, we're still just dealing with managers. We want to go ahead and add the modify option. And when you are done, go ahead and click apply and accept them, and go ahead and accept them again. So we did the access control. We have the same ability to do the same thing through the ICACLS.exe through our command. So I do want to pop up something real quick, and that is the server 2012 syntax. And that's actually going to be from the command prompt. You can load up the ICACLs. You can give it the file name or directory name. Then you could also do the edit permissions with the appropriate commands, because you'd want to actually grant additional permissions. It's just, this is a lot more of a pain than doing it through graphically, but again, you have options. So I'm not going to walk through how to do that through the commands. You can do that yourself. But once we've finished verifying that we've accepted the correct permissions for those, go ahead and exit out of them. Next, we're going to be opening up a command prompt. So you can right click on start, up to command prompt, and we're actually going to go ahead and modify some text via our ICACLS, just to verify we understand it. So how we do that is we're going to go ahead and type in ICACLS.exe, and where are we putting it, which is users administrator on the desktop in the folder desktop. We're going to name it ICACLS.txt. So we'll be doing a text document. Oh, helps if you spell it correctly. I fat fingered that. I added an extra A. And you'll notice by doing that, we actually went ahead and we generated a text document. Here are also the same structure that we just looked at via the website that I showed you, but this time we have it as a text document on our desktop for us. Okay, so once we have this, don't go closing, just go ahead and move it to the side. Let's go back to our command prompt, and we actually want to go back to our ICACLS, and we're actually going to doing some modification with the lab documents. We're going to start off with our SF files. Currently, it will list the security permissions for the users and groups that are there. So you can actually see that FS Manager has the ability to modify OI and CI. So where are those commands? How do we know which ones those are? We can actually go back to our text document and we can find the appropriate command that correlates to those. OI is object inherent, which means the folder it's an object and the permissions are inherited from the folder above it. And we have a CI, which is a container inherent. Same thing. That also does mean, though, any item placed inside of that will actually filter the same permissions below it. So how do we actually edit this? Let's go ahead and grant a permission. We're going to grant the permission to shop floor. And we're going to give them the permission to modify. We already did it graphically, so this will not accept it, but that's how we would do it. So how about instead of grant, let's go ahead and remove the permission. So processed, so that means it shouldn't have it. So what we can do is we can go back to our acls.exe and we can see the permissions that are there. It's still showing that M though, even though we removed shop floor. So let's go ahead and graphically verify that our removing actually did work. So when you click on shop floor, it still shows modify. So why did this not work? Should we actually use the word remove? Remove actually doesn't do what we would think. We go back to our document, and to remove, the SID removes all occurrences of a SID in an ACL. So we actually probably wanted deny, not remove. I want to just point out that we can do lots of things through our CLI. It's just we have to spend some time getting used to it. I'm going to go ahead and rerun the grant. Again, it won't process anything because, again, it already has the correct permissions, but I wanted to point that out there. So now that we re-added it, let's double check our permissions one last time. And we are still getting the same permission sets. So that's right. Our lab document actually shows that we will actually get an additional shop floor modify, but even though it was we granted the appropriate, I see what I did, I fat fingered it. That's totally my bad. That's why it wasn't fully functioning. We don't have a user called shop FLLOR, shop floor. It will process it. Even if it already has accepted it, it will process it again. So let's go ahead and re-verify the correct permissions. There we go. There we get it. It's really easy, especially via the command shell, to fat finger things. So keep that in mind. It's actually kind of funny because we granted it. Even though the permission was already there, we shouldn't have had to re-grant it because we already did that graphically. The lab calls for you to do the same steps 7 through 11 as it states in step 13, so that you can do that for all appropriate groups. So that means, since I already walked you through the SF file, you'd want to do the change modification for the HR file and for the managers. And then last, we have to validate. So going on to part 3. I'm not going to walk you through how to do both HR and manager. I walked you through the SF one. You can do the next one. Follow the same steps. So go ahead and close that RDP session and go ahead and open up our target Windows 2 machine. You should have an SF user 01, and we're going to be putting in our password. I'm going to do caps lock P, turn off caps lock, @ SSW0RD exclamation mark, and go ahead and connect. It should take a second to go ahead and load our setting. Our SF user should be part of the shop floor user group. You may get a pop-up for browsing other PCs. Just go ahead and click on no. So once it's open up any folder or file explorer. What we want to do is, in the box, you could also do this from a run dialog box. Just this a little easier. We're going to type in //172.30.0.15/lab documents. That is our server name, Windows Target 01 machine. That is our shared folder. So we have the ability to see the folders, but can we access them? We should not be able to see HR Manager or HR files. We should not be able to see Manager. We should have the ability to see SF files though. If we logged in as HR, we'd be able to see HR files. If you log in as Manager, we should be able to see our appropriate file and our manager files. So if we log in as shop floor manager, we'd be able to see SF files and manager. If we logged in as HR manager, we'd be able to see HR and manager. But that's how we can verify that it works. Go ahead and repeat the same steps for all the appropriate users. So FS user, HR user, SF manager, and HR manager, just to go ahead and verify. Actually, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to log off. I'm going to go ahead and close out of it. I want to actually log in as a different user, HR manager. Type in the appropriate password. Oh. Capital P @ SSW0RD exclamation mark. I want to make sure that I was spelling it correctly, and it is not like that. So let's go ahead and write out the entire names. HR manager at Secure Labs on demand.com. It did not like us doing just HR manager, so we had to do the @ the domain. Again, open up I'm going to do this time through a run dialog box. // type in the address of the server, 172.30.0.15 /lab documents. Here we should have access to HR. We should not have access to SF files, and we don't. And we should have access to manager files, because we logged in as HR manager. So go ahead and verify all the correct permissions for all the users. Again, just exit out, go back into the RDP session for Windows Target 2 machine, type in the appropriate username, and then the appropriate password, and that's it. So thank you and have a great day.